Hi there! Welcome back to another episode of Fairy Tale Nails. Today's story and nail design is The Voyages of Sindbad the Sailor. I did not know this story, and there's probably a good reason why. Please comment below if you had heard or read this story before, and if not, why do you think it didn't make it into our fairy tale books? After some feedback from my last video, I decided to do this video without voice mod. Though it may make a reappearance in future videos, you never know, and it is so much fun to use. Okay, sit back, snuggle your favorite pillow, stuffed animal, or pet, and please enjoy the story of Sindbad the Sailor, along with sparkly nail art. Thanks so much, guys. There once lived in the city of Baghdad a poor porter named Sindbad. One day, when he was carrying a heavy load from one end of the city to the other, and the sun was beating down on him, he happened to walk into a street where the stones were sprinkled with rosewater, and a gentle breeze cooled the air. He rested for a moment, looking around him, and saw that he was standing outside a grand villa, with courtyards, fountains, and shaded gardens. He knew who owned it: Sindbad the Sailor. Sindbad the porter stood looking at the home of Sindbad, growing more and more jealous of the other man's riches. "By the Prophet Muhammad," he shouted, waving his stick in the air, "this Sindbad the Sailor is no better a man than I am, yet he seems to enjoy every pleasure in life while I suffer 1,000 ills." It so happened that the shutters were open on the porch where Sindbad was sitting, and the sailor, sitting behind some hanging beads that kept the flies out, heard Sindbad's bitter words quite clearly. He sent his servants out to bring the porter into the house and said to him, "I do not blame you for your angry words, brother Sindbad, and I am truly sorry for the hardships in your life, but you are wrong to think that I have come by all this wealth without labor. I have, in fact, suffered many hardships and have faced death more often and more horribly than any man in Baghdad. Let me tell you some of my adventures so that you can judge which one of us has had the more difficult life." He made the porter sit down beside him, gave him some excellent wine and a dish full of tasty food, and began. "As a young man, I wasted most of my father's money until at length, bored by living in luxury, I went on a trading voyage with some merchants. After a few weeks at sea, our ship was caught in a fast current off some islands of the East Indies. The ship was dashed against the rocks, where it split into pieces, but we managed to scramble ashore, and some of our cargo. We had been wrecked at the foot of a large mountain, which was entirely composed of rubies, crystals, and other precious stones. Because there was no vegetation nor fresh water, however, my companions quickly died, and I was forced to bury them one by one. Then, weak as I was, I noticed that a vast river of black water flowed into the mountain, and I had just enough strength left to build myself a raft from the ship's timbers and embark on it. The current quickly carried me underground, but not before I had laden my raft with a cargo of rubies, emeralds, crystals, and gems of all kinds. As the waters swept me into the mountain, I fell into a deep sleep, which must have lasted for many days. When I awoke, I was surprised to find myself lying on the ground in an open country, and surrounded by black men who had tied my raft to the bank of the river. I greeted them courteously, and one of them addressed me in Arabic. "Brother, we beg you to tell us how you came to our country and who you are." After I had eaten some food that they offered me, I gave them an account of all that had happened since I left Baghdad. Then they took me to their king, and he, too, was struck with amazement and admiration at my adventures. He said that the rubies and the emeralds that I had brought from the mountain were larger than any he had seen, and invited me to stay in his palace as long as I wished. During my day in the city of Sindbad, for that was its name, I visited all the places of interest in the country, including the high mountain of whose summit Adam had been placed by the angel after being banished from paradise. I also visited the pearl fisheries of the coast and brought black pearls as big as pomegranates. In the palace itself, I spent, I admit, an indulgent interlude, the only such one in the course of my otherwise cruel misadventures. Attendants came at my bidding or hovered discreetly, anticipating my every wish. So skilled were they in divining a man's desires before he was even aware of them himself. Spacious hours were given to engaging converse in the luxurious pleasure gardens of the palace, where the peacocks strutted the sweeping lawns, and gazelles nibbled out of one's hand. By night there was feasting, the platters fragrant with the choicest of delicacies, and the goblets filled with the rarest of wines. The king enjoyed his riches, but was possessed of a wisdom that does not always come with wealth or majesty. Much as I learned from him of the precepts of old, the ancient truths that can guide and strengthen along the way, and have since stood me in good stead, not least for all that they near bowed me under during some of the perils I was yet to endure. Though my stay with the king of Sindbad was as so agreeable, I longed to see Baghdad again, and begged my host to arrange for my return. Regretfully, the king agreed and gave me a rich present from his treasury, along with a letter to the Caliph of Baghdad, which read as follows: From the king of Sindbad, who is carried aloft by 1,000 elephants, who lives in a palace built by 100,000 rubies, and who possesses in his treasury 20,000 crowns cut out of diamonds, to the Caliph of Baghdad. We send you, through your loyal servant Sindbad the sailor, a small present of a vase cut out of a single ruby, filled with pearls, and wrapped in the skin of a serpent, that can cure anyone of any illness by the touch of its scales. This humble present is no more than a token of our friendship to you. In return, we ask for your friendship and salute you as a brother. I thanked the king by falling at his feet and kissing them. Then the ship set sail, and after many weeks we arrived in Baghdad, where I presented the caliph with the king's letter and gifts, and was made very welcome. Several years passed, during which I made 7 more voyages and suffered 7 more shipwrecks, accompanied by unbearable hardships. It was my destiny to see my companions drowned, or roasted by one-eyed monsters, or devoured by serpents, or cooked by cannibals. I alone among them lived to tell the tale, and was lucky to return to Baghdad after each voyage, laden with rich merchandise of aloes and sandalwood, camphor, nutmegs, cloves, pepper, and ginger. But the storms and my narrow escapes from death had turned my hair white before its time, so that I became old and bent with the weight of knowledge. I made up my mind that I would never again risk my life at sea, but would stay at home and enjoy the pleasant fountains and pools of my garden, while musicians played and sang around me. One day, however, while I was entertaining my friends, the caliph sent for me. Sindbad, he told me, I want you to go once more to the king of Sindbad to bring him my thanks and some presents in return for the honor he has shown me. I protested that I was too old and worn to undertake such a dangerous journey, but the caliph insisted and gave me 1,000 gold pieces to pay for hiring a ship and a crew. I had no choice but to obey the caliph's command and set off once more for Sindbad. After a pleasant voyage, I arrived at the island and went at once to visit the king. He was delighted with the caliph's present and sent him in return a bed made of gold, 50 robes of crimson satin, and 100 more of the finest white linen, 2 more beds of ivory richly inlaid, an agate bowl, and a table made of camphor wood and pearls, which he said had belonged to the great King Solomon. As soon as these gifts had been loaded on board, I set sail for Baghdad. But within a few days we were attacked by pirates. They killed anyone who tried to resist and took prisoner all the others, including myself. They stripped us of our fine clothes and dressed us in rags. Then they set sail for a distant island, where they sold us as slaves in the market. I was bought by a rich merchant, who took me to his house, gave me a bow and some arrows, and ordered me to join him on an elephant hunt. After several hours' journeying, we came to a forest full of elephants. My master ordered me to climb into a tree and shoot as many of them as I could. I killed so many of these poor beasts that my master was very pleased with me, because he was able to sell the elephants' ivory tusks for large sums of money to foreign merchants. I went on hunting and shooting in the forest until one day the elephants became filled with a terrible rage and set out to destroy me. I had heard them trumpeting as they trampled through the forest looking for me, and had climbed high up into a tree. They surrounded the tree, pounding the earth with their huge feet until the whole forest seemed to shake. Then the largest of them twisted his trunk around the body of the tree and shook it so violently that he tore it up from the roots. To my surprise, the elephant did not kill me, but instead lifted me from the tree and carried me to an open place where he put me down. Then the whole herd turned and went back to the forest. Looking around me, I saw that they had placed me on top of a huge mound of elephants' bones and tusks. I think in order to show me how evil it was to kill them just to take their ivory tusks, I made my way back to the city a wiser and a humbler man. My master was so amazed at my escape that he set me free and gave me money to return to Baghdad. The monsoon winds filled the sails of my ship once more and carried me safely home. As soon as I arrived, I visited the Caliph and recounted my adventures. He said he would not have believed the story of the elephants had he not known I was an honest man. Then he ordered his secretaries to write the tale down in letters of gold and store it away in his library. I came home laden with his presents and made up my mind I would never leave the city again. Here Sindbad paused, and then he offered Hindbad the pipe from which he had been smoking. "Well, my friend," he said, "have you heard of anyone who has suffered more unhappiness or been through so many misfortunes?" "No, sir," said the porter, "and my own small discomforts are nothing in comparison to yours." Then Sindbad offered him 100 gold pieces and invited him to be a regular guest at his table. From that day on, Hindbad never had to carry another load, and the two old men continued to live together in friendship until the hour of their deaths. The end. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Fairy Tale Nails. If you like this channel and are looking forward to the next fairy tale and nail art design, please let me know in the comments below. And if you liked this episode and would like to see more future episodes, please consider subscribing and click the bell. That way you'll be notified when the next episode is complete. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, guys. See ya. Bye.